Hello and welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I am your host, Mr. J.R. Everhart, the Grumpster himself. This week we are going to talk about managing inventory and buying and selling equipment. And when is a good time to buy. I'm going to give you some resources that I use to buy equipment from and that sort of thing. We're going to talk about how to get the best deal on equipment these days and that sort of thing. So stick around. You don't want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, if I could have literally 60 seconds of your time here just to ask you to please subscribe to the channel. It costs absolutely nothing to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you can help us give you more of this content on the free side of the channel. Also, if you're really digging what we're doing here and you're digging the Grumpy Sound Guy content, please consider joining the membership side of the YouTube channel. It costs about $5 a month, so about the price of a Starbucks cup of coffee or whatever. You can become an inner circle supporter of the Grumpy Sound Guy and the content that I'm putting up. We'll get all kinds of really cool one-on-one live chat stuff in there, group chat stuff, all that sort of thing. Plus you'll get content that is posted there that will never become public, so make sure you get over there and check that out. And thank you for supporting everything that I'm doing here with the Grumpy Sound Guy. Hello, welcome back. Let me preempt the video with the fact that I am getting over COVID, okay? I had COVID all last week. By the weekend, I really thought that I was feeling better. I did actually feel better. And then here we are week 2, and it is trying to come back and trying to kick my rear end. So, if I got a little nose thing here every now and then, you're just going to have to work with me, okay? It's not a perfect world. So, inventory. Man, there's some questions you got to ask yourself first when you decide what you need to keep in inventory. Because most of you guys are like me, you're gear junkies, you want to have the most inventory, every time we see something cool, we want to buy it, and throw it in inventory. And what I have found over the years is that is a good way to lose money, because if it's not gear that you're going to use regularly and you don't have a plan for that gear, then it's really just sitting there making you no money, and whatever money you spent on the gear has now been wasted. But the other side of that is if you're someone who flips gear during the winter like I do, then buying, gear at a good price and a good rate can set you up to be able to generate some income in the slower months. Excuse me. And I do a whole bunch of that. I am regularly looking for gear to buy, and in the winter months, I flip it. The way I approach inventory with CLP audio and staging is I typically buy pre-owned, because that's really where the deals are. And if you know what you're looking for and you know how to test gear and you go into it knowing that it is a used piece of equipment, then you can absorb some of the refurbishing costs that it takes. And I intentionally, inventory gear that I know I'm going to be able to send to this gig or that gig. And then you have the whole, scenario of, you think you got enough gear to do whatever it is you want to do. And then, somebody comes along that requires you to go buy some other gear that they're going to need for that specific event. I used to go run and grab gear for whatever that is and just keep it in inventory for when that unicorn gig comes back around, what I have learned to do now is just try to do it with the gear that I have in place, or rent some gear from a buddy, just to get through the first year to see if that customer is going to repeat and come back before I go and start buying other gear to meet their needs or whatever, because they don't care. They just want you to do what they want you to do, and if you can meet their needs, great. If you can't meet their needs, well, then they'll just call somebody else. But you can get into a trap that way, constantly buying gear for that one gig, and then that gig may never come back around. And now you're stuck with that specific gear that only works for that event. I try to buy stuff that's really scalable, so I can scale the gear from a small, venue up to a large outdoor thing. There's a whole lot of things that I'm thinking as I'm inventorying gear. With CLP Audio, we usually have, especially this year, it's really going to look this way. Got 2 and 3 crews going out at the same time. So there's going to be a whole bunch of that, coming down the pike this year. Well, that requires gear. Now, things that I typically do not buy used, typically, are mixing consoles and things like that. Any delicate electronics, unless it's coming from somebody that I know, or unless it's coming out of a studio or something like that, and it's in A1 excellent condition with low hours, that's not something that I typically screw around with. I usually just buy that stuff new, then I have a warranty on it, and that kind of thing. If something goes wrong, then, I'm good to go there. So that's kind of how I approach that. Now, places that I buy gear from, the obvious places first. Facebook Marketplace is the new yard sale, place to find gear. I will say this, the best deals are never close to home, or rarely close to home. So, like, I've gone to, dear Lord, I went to Cincinnati to buy some subs one time. That's 6 hours away from where I'm at. Went to Delaware to buy some gear one time, down into North Carolina to buy some gear one time. I mean, you got to kind of go where the deals are. And if you're getting a really good deal on gear, I went to New Jersey another time to buy some gear. If you're getting a really good deal on the gear, you can afford to absorb the travel costs and whatever it takes to refurbish the gear. And still be okay. And then how it works in my world is I typically use the gear for, 3 to 7, 8 years or something other, and then sell the gear pretty much for what I had into it. So that means that gear made me an enormous amount of money, and I basically got the gear for free. That's the way to do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's kind of how our inventory is stacked and packed, We run after the deals. Having money on tap all the time is huge, because then when the deals come along, you got money to go buy the deals. I love the band buyout, stuff where you go and buy a whole system, from somebody. And then, over the wintertime, I can pick that system apart and sell it. Reverb.com is another good place to buy and sell gear. Obviously eBay, but some other places that I use, honestly, nowadays you can Google whatever piece of gear you're looking for, and you'll find pre-owned deals at like Guitar Centers and places like that, even just straight from Google. But churchgear.com down in Tennessee, they're a great place to buy gear, especially if you're buying, high-end amplifiers and stuff like that. I bought a bunch of Macro I 5000s off of those cats that came out of a big install out in the Midwest. All their gear comes from church installs. So if a company comes in to do an upgrade, all the old gear goes to churchgear.com. They go through everything, refurb everything, and then resell it. And man, I'm telling you what, there's some really good deals to be found on there. Gear Trader is another one. Some of these places are third-party conglomerates, that are just kind of being an online consignment place. What is the other one? Solaris, I think, is the other one that's kind of like that. They're just an online thrift store basically for gear. Um, some of them charge a monthly membership fee, so you can't even bid on the gear or buy the gear, unless you're doing that, unless you're a member, or find someone who's a member. The other thing is online auctions. Like we have a company here in the Mid-Atlantic. I'm tempted to say it's Ramsey or something like that. I kind of got off of that site because what I was finding was a lot of people were going in there and driving up the price of the gear to almost new prices. And it doesn't make any sense that way. I would rather go into a nightclub that's closing down just as an independent and buy their entire system, and then bring it home, cherry pick stuff that I could use in my inventory from that, which at this stage of the game, I'm basically going to get for free because I'm going to sell everything else in that lot of gear and turn profits there. So I would rather approach it from that perspective, but a lot of those online auctions can be a place to, get gear. It just depends on where people's heads are in the bidding process. I've seen some of those situations go really well where, the bidding was excellent, and it was definitely worth driving the 2 hours to DC or Baltimore to pick up the gear. There's been other situations where it wasn't any of that, where it was like I'm sitting there looking at the prices as they're going up, and I'm like, you could almost buy this new for this price, So it doesn't really benefit me to get into the auction bidding war with these guys to do that. But you're going to have to, kind of seek that out in your own area. I'm sure there's different auction houses in every different market of the country. Yeah. So, I mean, really honestly, I have found most of the gear, I'm going to say most of the gear that I have bought in the last 3 years, most of that has come from Facebook Marketplace. Now there has been times, and this happened to me once last year, a guy had a whole bunch of JBL SRX stuff that came out of a Latino bar and claimed that they were this, that, and the other, and I got down there and the model numbers were wrong, a ton of blown drivers in the boxes. It was just, some of them were cannibalized and had been just, torn apart and were sitting there in parts and pieces. And this guy wanted top pre-owned dollar, for this gear. And I'm like, man, the gear is not even, half this stuff isn't even functional. Admittedly stood there and said that they had replaced a bunch of the sub drivers with like, PV drivers or Eminence drivers. They were not JBL drivers. Well, man, that just absolutely kills the value of the equipment. Make sure that you're asking those questions when you're buying pre-owned gear. Is this all original drivers? If they say, well, I don't know, I just got it from, blah, 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 or I found it at a yard sale and I'm just flipping it. That's okay and fine if it looks like it's cosmetically there, but just know that you're taking a chance. Like in that scenario I just told you about, that was an hour and a half away. We spent 3 hours on the road that day for nothing. We came home with nothing because it was just junk. I am not afraid to take my cordless drill and tear the cabinets apart right there on site and check drivers if I have any suspicion that, this stuff is not up to par. Because what's going to happen is the second I get home, I'm going to tear all those cabinets apart. I'm going to check all the drivers, and I'm going to make sure everything's functional. I'm going to make sure that they're the correct drivers for those boxes. And then I typically send the grills out to get sandblasted and powder coated. And then, I paint the boxes and bam, you got brand new looking speakers. I've done that a lot. A lot of my gear is like that, So yeah, that's just some things to kind of keep in mind as you're trying to, work your way through inventory. Don't buy stuff you don't need. Don't let your inner gear junkie get you into financial trouble, because he will. Another thing that I buy new, I started to say this earlier and just kind of got distracted. I got a little bit of medicine head going on here. Is, anything RF, Any of the wireless stuff, I typically buy new unless it's coming from someone that I personally know or from another production company that I know are Shure or Sennheiser dealers. And I know I'm getting genuine Shure and Sennheiser products, and I'm getting products that's been taken care of. The big thing about RF that you need to be very conscious about is there's a whole boatload of clone, fake Shure and Sennheiser wireless stuff, in-ear monitoring systems, wireless microphone systems that are just junk. They're fake. They are not Shure. They are not Sennheiser. And if you have a problem with that system, you are not going to get it serviced. And really by law, they probably have the right to confiscate that from you. That's kind of how that sort of thing works, so you're going to want to be super careful about that. Cables is another thing, again, unless it's coming from someone that I know or it's coming out of a studio environment or something like that. I don't typically buy, big groups of XLR cables or speaker cables or anything like that used. I typically buy that stuff new, But, if it's coming from somebody I know, I have a lot of people. I'm very well networked in the music business, and I got a lot of people who call me regularly because they know I buy and sell gear as well as everything else that I do. I will buy from those guys because I trust those cats. You know what I mean? Other than that, I buy the stuff new. A good thing to buy pre-owned is racks and trunks. Because, man, those things are expensive. They really are. Like we have, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because we're around D.C. and Baltimore where there's a lot of government stuff going on and a lot of military stuff going on. But we regularly on Facebook Marketplace have people that are selling, like 14 and 16U rolling amp racks that are used. A lot of cable trunks. Like I buy a bunch of like 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 feet deep, trunks, and then I just put them on wheels. I'll put a piece of plywood underneath of them, paint it black, and put really good wheels on them. And man, those things make great cable trunks. And most of the time I can get those things for $75. If they're in excellent shape, maybe $100 a piece. Man, price cable trunks. Cable trunks are like $300, $400, $500 a piece. Those 14, 16U rolling racks, dude, I've seen some of them up $700, $800. So I mean, the pre-owned marketplace is definitely the place to get racks and all the incidentals, that sort of thing. Another thing I don't buy pre-owned often is mic stands. Usually mic stands is something I buy new. Mic stands take such a beating. And I only use the DR Pro mic stands because I think they're better than the K&M or KLs or whatever it is that everybody else raves about. I think the DR Pros are built better. The only issue I have with them is where you tighten the telescoping boom, those little tabs will sometimes break off. But what I did was got on eBay and bought little molded T-bolts to go in there. So when one of them, kind of slips off the thing, I just put a T-bolt in it, and the T-bolts are actually made better than the little things that are on the mic stands, from the factory. And those things last, man. They just do. It's very, very seldom that I lose a mic stand. And I mean, my mic stands take a beating. So I typically buy those. That is a Musician's Friend Guitar Center brand DR Pro. So you will only find those through Musician's Friend and Guitar Center. I think I buy them off of eBay. I think you can get a pair of the tall ones for, I don't know, they're like $70 a piece. So they're like $140 or something for a pair of them. And then I buy the shorties. I think they're about the same price, $70, $80 a piece. And they just last. So I usually buy that stuff new. Now, obviously, if I found any in a band buyout or in a big lot of gear that I was buying and they were in good shape, I would throw them in inventory. That's cool. See, that's the trick to buying gear in a big lump, package, is that, you can usually cherry pick gear out of that and you're basically getting that gear for free because you're going to be making all your money on the gear that you sell out of that. Now, granted, that means you need to have some money, 4, 5, 6 grand laying around all the time, to be able to do those sort of things. But I have turned, 3, 4 grand into 6 or 8 grand many, many times over the years, being able to sell equipment, especially if it's stuff that I know is in high demand. I buy drum kits that way and resell them. I'm looking at a drum kit right now. It's freaking gorgeous. It's in Baltimore, and the guy wants $500 for it, and I know I could flip that kit for, $800, $900. That's a $300 profit just for, running to Baltimore and back. And I'd probably take my girlfriend and we'd, hit lunch somewhere and that sort of thing and kind of make a day trip of it. It's really not that big of a deal. But yeah, man, that's how this is the back end of making money in this business, because it's obviously we need to make money every time we go out and actually do gigs, but you're making money every time you buy a piece of equipment that you never have to pay for. So you pay for it when you buy it, but then you use it for 5 or 7 years, and then you sell it for what you paid for it. So then you basically use the gear for free. That's how I buy gear. That's how we do business in our world. And I have done that countless times. All the inventory that I am using week after week after week right now, I could sell tomorrow for what I have into it, maybe even make a profit on some of it, because I take really good care of my gear, and everyone knows that, and everyone knows that I don't play around with, changing drivers out with junk drivers and stuff like that. They know if they buy it from me, they're getting something that's done right and that is correct. So, man, there's a lot of money on the table right there, and how you manage your inventory and how you choose what to buy, how you can buy and sell and flip gear. You just got to, in this business, guys, you just got to use every little teeny tiny stream of income that you can possibly muster up, so that you're making maximum amount of money every time you go out. You just do. Now there's some things that you buy that, you're just not going to make any money back off of if you ever have to sell it, but use it to death to where it pays for itself, and then there you go. You're still okay. I bought 6 Chauvet Intimidator Spot 360s from Sweetwater 4 years ago with cases. I think I was into that for like $3,500 or $4,000. Bought them brand new. I just didn't want to buy, or didn't have an opportunity to buy really good pre-owned, movers that were legit movers. And I knew when I bought them that I would probably never get my money back out of these things, but I bought them under the pretense that I'm going to use those things until they can't be used anymore. I've already had one fail on me, sent it to Chauvet, they repaired it, sent it back, it's back in use now, and I mean, super cool, groovy stuff, man. If you're going to buy used, make sure, or you're going to buy new, make sure it's a calculated risk. And make sure that you're like, I'm going to use this so that it's making me money, and I'm going to make it making me money until it's not just paid for itself, which these lights have already paid for themselves, but then turns me a profit for years after that. So if I'm buying new, I want to make sure I'm buying something that can last 10 years, or I'm buying something that can really, have a good ROI, return on investment. So that's the video today. I didn't want to keep you a long time. I'm sorry for the scratchy voice and the runny nose, but I'm still trying to get over this stupid COVID thing. So I love you guys, and I will see you next week.